Hello, Lorraine, and hello, everyone. Welcome to Ask the Advocate Live. We are here tonight with Lorraine Hightower, Dyslexia Educational Advocate, and we're here to answer your questions tonight about the end of the year, dyslexia, whatever's on your mind. So, Lorraine, I know it has been a busy time of year for parents and for you. What are you seeing right now that you are feeling like you really want to talk about and bring to parents' attention?
Yeah, no, thank you, Melissa. And first of all, I think you should tell everybody who you are because you've been on my
Oh,
team for quite a while now. So I'll
yes.
introduce Melissa, but tell everybody a little bit about your background real quick.
Yeah. I'm Melissa Minnick, and I've worked with Lorraine for about 6 years here, and I'm a former teacher. So, as Lorraine will likely share through the course of answering questions, she comes to this work as a parent who has turned her own pain into a passion for helping others. And I have a little bit of a different story coming to this work as a teacher, but also feeling that same passion because I know that there are students that have gone through my classroom and I've seen them slip through the cracks over the years. And so, while we come to this work from different places, we are both really excited to be here with you tonight to answer any questions that you have and to wrap up this school year strong.
Yes. Yes, and thank you for the question, Melissa.
Yeah.
And thank you guys for joining us. I will say it is a really tough time of school in that there's so many assessments going on for students who learn differently. This is an especially tough time of year because in our home state of Virginia here, we're seeing these SOLs, standards of learning, to see if they've mastered grade level content. For kids who have learning differences or dyslexia, they're doing a lot of end of year skill assessments. So they're looking at how did they do on their decoding assessment that maybe was given earlier or mid year. How are they doing on their phonemic awareness, their spelling? Like all of these assessments are really tiring. And some of what we're seeing is some parents are just kind of realizing a whole school year has gone by. They're looking at end of year reports, some of these assessments, and they're like, oh my goodness, my child is not even close to meeting the mark. Why could that be? Especially for really young students. They're wondering why the school hasn't reached out to them. What do they do now that their child is not meeting that mark? We have a lot of families who are wondering what should they do over the summer. Kids who have
Yeah.
individualized education programs, their parents are like, should I let the school district put them through summer school? What is ESY, extended school year? Is my child a candidate for that? So many things are
So
going
many
on.
questions.
But I want to jump
Yeah.
right in. I love nothing more than doing these live
Yeah.
calls with real families and real parents and giving them answers. As Melissa said, I am the owner and founder of our advocacy practice. We've been doing this for 10 years, serving hundreds and hundreds of kids, working with parents and school teams collaboratively. So let's jump in. I mean, I don't know if our,
Yeah.
our participants want to ask questions or if questions were sent in advance.
Yeah,
Whatever
we
you
have
think,
both,
Melissa.
Lorraine. So I have some questions here, some people who sent some things in advance, so we'll
Okay.
tackle those. But if
Sure.
you're watching live and you'd like to ask Lorraine your question, please type it into the Q&A box, and we will make sure that we get it answered this evening. All right, so let's start off with the first question. I thought this was a good one to start with. It says, I don't necessarily have a specific question. I
Okay.
just found out my daughter is dyslexic and my
Mhm.
mind is racing nonstop.
Yeah.
Lorraine, can you share some ideas of what are the next steps for this parent?
Sure, sure. Well, I'm not sure how old the child is, obviously, but I think I can identify personally and professionally at how overwhelming it is when you find out. I'm going to say that your child is not normal, in air quotes here. We all want our kids to be as normal as possible. But I do want to give that parent hope that dyslexia is the most common learning disorder or difference. I like the word difference that exists, and that it affects up to 20% of the population. So it is a good time to be dyslexic in the world, whether you're in school or in life. We have a lot of assistive technology devices that allow kids to show what they know while we're also ensuring that they're getting that effective and appropriate Orton Gillingham based structured literacy intervention. So for that mom, I would say take a deep breath, know that
Yes.
it's going to be okay. There is hope out there. Oh, I shouldn't say hope out there. There are solutions out there that should give her hope for her
Mhm.
child because I have walked that path. My son is now 21, but I remember feeling terrified, staying up every night, like searching the internet. What does this mean? And a lot of what you see online is pretty depressing and it paints a pretty dark path. But we know from all the families we've served that if this mother is homeschooling, there are private interventions that are available for kids with dyslexia. If her child is in the public school, there are ways to make a referral, and we would recommend that to get appropriate accommodations or services through the school district. And there's a lot that she can learn. I'm just going to go out and say my favorite Bible, if you will, use that word loosely, is Sally Shaywitz's book, Overcoming Dyslexia. It is huge, but you can get it on audio. And
Mhm.
Sally Shaywitz is probably retired or getting close to retiring, but was at and founded the Yale Center on Dyslexia and Creativity, and she just breaks down dyslexia so beautifully for parents who are wanting to know all the information, background information. So I hope that's helpful to that parent.
Yeah, definitely. And I just want to add on to that, if this parent feels like they just want to talk about it with an
Okay.
advocate,
Oh, with
just
us.
to
Yeah, they could
have a
call us.
conversation, just give
Yeah.
us a call. It's a free call and we'll be happy to just talk to you, help you figure out what your next steps might be. So you can always call us at the office as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah.
Okay,
Absolutely.
next question. They're
Yeah.
coming at you.
Okay.
What is the best way to proactively make a change in a school district when
Mm.
identification of students with dyslexia is delayed?
That's a great question, actually. And it's very common. I will say across the country, these literacy assessments look different in every state and every county. I'm going to say the best way to make a change, number one, is to have an appropriate and effective literacy screener. So children in kindergarten should be screened, first grade, second grade, third grade. I mean, literacy should be checked. And when I say literacy, I'm really talking about everything from sound, letter, sound symbol association to decoding, spelling, reading fluently for understanding. These should be checked at certain intervals. And each district should have, there's a lot of screeners out there that are specific to dyslexia. Doesn't have to be that way, but just an effective literacy screener is a great place to start. And then I'm going to say there should be some kind of an interpretation guide to go along with that screener that tells the teachers in the district when they should take next steps. So a lot of school districts use the MTSS model, multi-tier systems of support, but there should also be somewhere in that guidance, when do you as a teacher refer for an evaluation because you suspect this child might have a specific learning disability or another disability. And too often, Melissa, we're seeing that parents are having to make that referral. Parents are
Mhm.
raising the red flag, but I want to kind of implore upon the teachers here or district staff that their teams should be trained to know when literacy is not coming together. Usually school districts do these assessments at the beginning, the middle, and the end of the year. There's lots of opportunities to look further and decide if you're going to do some response to intervention. Should the child be evaluated? At a minimum, talk to the parent, let them know what you're seeing if you're a teacher, let them know what their options are. And I'm also going to say the last thing is you have to have really solid teacher training on literacy in your school district. And it
For
is
sure.
beyond, above and beyond, just teaching some of, I mean, I hate to say, but, a lot of us know about the Lucy Calkins um, literacy curriculum, which was ineffective. And there's a lot of, information on NPR and all of these publications that talk about how we have failed kids in the United States with literacy. We're reading on about a fourth grade level. The NWEA scores show that. So school districts have an obligation to ensure that their teachers are trained on the science of reading. They know how to use Orton Gillingham with kids who have dyslexia, and it's not okay, in my opinion, to mislead teachers or families to say this curriculum is going to allow this student to make meaningful progress when there's no research to say that that generalized curriculum on get your mouth ready to say the sounds, use context clues is actually going to teach kids how, to have developed phonemic awareness skills. So
Yeah,
hopefully that's
that's an
helpful.
important
Yeah,
point because we have people, who are here from all across the country, not just
yes,
in Virginia. And in
sure.
some states, that kind of education is still happening for our
Yes,
students. So we need to be
yes.
aware of that for
Right,
sure.
but it does begin with screening, and I would propose that every state is already doing some degree of screening. It's just how effective is that screener? Because,
And
yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say that makes me talking about systemic changes and ensuring that there is an effective screener in place. All of that makes me think of the work that you did before you started
Yes.
this practice. And I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit about the grassroots movements that
Mhm.
exist across the
Yes,
country and
absolutely.
how
Yes.
you can become involved in that kind of thing.
Sure, and I'm going to keep it short because I want to answer questions tonight. People can check out, about my background if they want to. But what I think you're speaking about is that a very frustrated mom who was in a school district that didn't say dyslexia, didn't understand it. I partnered with parents and teachers who were part of the grassroots movement of Decoding Dyslexia Virginia. And Decoding Dyslexia Virginia is all across the United States. They're often active on Facebook. Parents should look for them as a resource of like-minded parents who are at every stage of this process. Like from the first parent who said, I just found out and I'm terrified my child has dyslexia. It is so, how do I want to say it? It's so reassuring to even meet people online who can reassure you that I've been exactly where you are and all will be well. But
And
Decoding
I understand
Dyslexia
in
Virginia,
Virginia, I was going to say, I understand in Virginia at least, they've been very effective in lobbying for systemic
oh yes,
change.
yes,
And, so if
multiple
that's
state
something
laws
that
have been
they're
passed.
looking for, decoding dyslexia in their
Yeah.
state might be a place to start.
Yeah, yeah,
Right.
absolutely. I mean, and again, if parents want more information on that, they can contact us for a complimentary discovery call or what have you, or resources. But we want you to know we're not the only ones who are passionate about dyslexia. We are well aware, and many parents are well aware that their kids' needs are not being met.
Yeah. Okay, we have another question from a person who is joining us live.
Great.
My
I'm gonna
son was
take some notes
diagnosed.
on some of these because
Oh,
they get long.
okay.
So yeah, go
Yes,
ahead.
that's true. That is true. So,
Hmm.
my son was diagnosed with dyslexia and dysgraphia,
Hmm.
started IEP January 2026, made
Hmm.
significant progress
Hmm.
with SETSS services and
Hmm.
home tutoring.
Hmm.
And now, on the last meeting, the school recommends ICT class for next year, but no SETSS. I am wondering if I should ask for SETSS since 1 year of IEP is not finishing
Hmm.
with the end one the school year, but in January of 2027.
Okay.
Also, how will his IEP proceed?
How will the IEP proceed? Okay, let me get that down. So I can answer all of this.
And
All
I
right.
can repeat it if you need it
Yeah,
as
thank
well.
you. So do we know how old the student is or not exactly? It's okay
No.
if we don't. We'll just move on. Okay. So dyslexia and dysgraphia got the IEP in February. I think these acronyms must be different placements within the school division. I'm not familiar with these acronyms, but I'm thinking an ICT is more of a general education class or maybe a team taught classroom where there's like a special education teacher and a general education teacher, and maybe the SETSS, if the mom wants to add more into the Q&A, I'm
Yeah.
assuming that is more of a specialized education setting where the child is getting targeted intervention. And I heard you say, Melissa, that the child made great progress since January. And so what it sounds like is the team is wanting to make a change in services. And we see this all the time. And obviously, a change in services should be based on progress, and there should be multiple pieces of data to speak to that progress. So if the IEP team back in January determined that your child with dyslexia and dysgraphia, let's just say they had these certain needs, obviously, probably decoding, spelling, fluency. I'm just going to start with that for our hypothetical example here.
Mhm.
And then they're saying, oh, they're really making such progress. We want to change their services and their setting. They shouldn't be able to do that unless they have multiple pieces of data, like some of these skill assessments that we're talking about, or mid-year, end-of-year assessments to show that the child no longer requires specially designed instruction. Because when we think of specially designed instruction in a special education setting, that means the school district is changing the content, the delivery, the methodology for how they are presenting that instruction. And often that can't be duplicated in a, less restrictive general education setting. So I think this parent, I'll get to her, how will that proceed going forward, should absolutely meet with the IEP team, ask them for the data to support the suggested or recommended change in services, and really peel back all the layers on like what were those SCTSS services supposed to be serving? Where is the gap? Is your child now performing on grade level so there is no kind of a gap? And if there is a gap, what is the rationale by which they're proposing the change? A lot of school teams talk about least restrictive environment as the reason they want to push a lot of kids back in the general education curriculum. And I just want to say I am obviously a huge fan of all of students being in the general education curriculum when it makes sense. But for kids who have dyslexia, it is actually, in my opinion, harmful for them to be in a general education classroom trying to do reading or spelling on grade level words if their present levels are, a year to 2 to 3 grade levels below. So there's a way to prescriptively write the IEP so that they are spending some time in that general education classroom, but then they're also getting that targeted, direct, individualized literacy instruction that they will need. And when the mom
Mhm.
says, how will we proceed, I guess, forward, a minimum of once a year, the school is obligated to meet with you as parents to propose a new annual IEP. That anniversary date can be at any point throughout the 12 months. It's kind of a, if your child had their eligibility in, say, April, maybe their IEP anniversary date is June or something like that. But a minimum of once a year, they should be meeting with you to look at your child's needs, functional, academic, developmental needs. What are the goals that are in place? Sometimes they will master a goal and they will have data to support it, and that's wonderful. But then it's like, are there other needs that have cropped up that we now need to address? So we always say IEPs are not like a one and done. They are a fluid document. They should be based on needs, all needs. And if there is data, and Melissa and I look for 3 different data points to kind of triangulate that progress, then we will recommend to families, yeah, I think that actually we can let that goal go off the IEP. We can consider if there's any additional needs, or we can just celebrate the progress. So I don't know if I got all the components of that question. Hopefully I did, Melissa. Let me know
I
if I.
think so. I think so. And of course, if you have any more questions about Lorraine's answer or you want to add any more information, feel free to do so. Okay. I think you're going to need your piece of paper for this one
Okay,
because
sure.
it is a longer one, but there's so much to unpack in here. So
Oh, let's
there's a
do it
lot
in
to cover.
chunks, Melissa. Chunks, please.
Okay. I will try.
All right.
So it starts, I've gotten so much pushback for an IEP assessment. Now they are discussing retention. The
Hmm.
school performed a dyslexia assessment and it came back with high markers for dyslexia. I've gone straight to the special education department to request an IEP due to the school dismissing concerns. I was told by the special education department that they do not recognize dyslexia, but could assess for a general learning disability. I was
Wow.
also told dyslexia wouldn't warrant an IEP because their learning models are already dyslexia based.
Hmm.
I was
Okay.
told he was too young for an IEP because he is only 6.
Okay.
He's in first grade. You want to start with those? Because then it goes
Yes,
on.
that's a lot. All right. So I heard the part about pushback on, I think that you said an IEP assessment. I just want to clarify for whoever might
Evaluation.
listen to this or the replay. I think what that parent is implying is that they asked for an evaluation by the school district because they suspected dyslexia or some type of a disability that had an educational impact, right? And then I think I heard you say that they were recommending retention. I don't want to go too far down this path, but I will say that all of the research that I have looked at over the years does not recommend retention for students who have an average to above average IQ and have literacy needs because of their dyslexia. There is lots of research out there on the cumulative social and emotional damage, I'm just going to say, that these students end up growing up with. So I do respect sometimes very well-intentioned school staff will say, well, they're so young, let's just put them through another year of this. But we want everybody who's making that decision to be mindful of what the research says. And it does imply that it's harmful, that it's more important that they actually get that targeted instruction to close those gaps. And then I think
And
you
this
said,
parent adds on to the retention part later in here, and she says, "I'm not against retention due to him being the youngest in the class because he has a
right.
summer birthday.
Mhm.
However, I refuse to retain him without additional supports and accommodations in place. Reintroducing the same material will not benefit him."
Right. Well, and I would agree. And I would, again, I can't make a comment without seeing her child's information,
Sure.
but what I'm pointing to is the research that says that's not the right placement. If the IQ is average to above average, and we're just talking about a dyslexic student, which sounds like we are.
Yeah.
Okay. And then I think you said high markers for dyslexia. The school said that they don't assess for dyslexia. So that is also a very common misconception. And what I would say is it's true that schools often, don't say we assess for dyslexia, but what they do assess for as part of their psychological and educational evaluations that are very common is they look at specific learning disabilities. And in the federal IDEA, which is the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, there's a whole paragraph on what dyslexia is as a specific learning disability, what distinguishes it apart from other specific learning disabilities. So, in a sense, they may not, and schools can actually use some of these dyslexia indexes that point to dyslexia, but they're not really assessing for dyslexia. So when parents suspect the disability of dyslexia, they want to make sure they're asking for a evaluation because they suspect a specific learning disability. And then you can know as parents, dyslexia is part of that specific learning disability. And then I think I heard you say, I wrote so fast here. Tell me the
The
rest.
next
Too
part
young. I
was,
wrote down too young, Melissa, that they said
yep,
it's too young for the IEP, he or she.
sure. You can do that one next, sure.
Okay, yes. So what we want to say about that is kids are never, too young for an IEP. I mean, I guess I should say infants are too young, but under like child find, and this is really more of IDEA Part C, that Federal Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. Children zoned in certain school districts as young as 2 can be evaluated for services. They don't actually call it an IEP. It's usually I think it's an individualized family service plan. We see a lot of young kids who have dyslexia have been found eligible under Child Find. They're often getting speech services for
Mhm.
articulation or, so there is no too young from 2 years of age on up as far as IDEA Part C is concerned. And I also want to say that these evaluations are norm referenced and standardized to their same age peers. So we do hear this sometimes from school teams who will say, oh, they're only in kindergarten, we can't evaluate, they're too young. Well, they might not be able to do all the assessments that they might want to do because some of these assessments are normed for certain ages, but there are other evaluation assessments that can absolutely be done for beginning, phonemic awareness, literacy skills, so we know if this child is performing in that normative range or not. Okay,
The other part of this
did I
question that I
miss?
thought
Yeah.
was interesting as well is she was told by she was told that dyslexia wouldn't warrant an IEP because their
Oh,
learning models or their
oh,
general education curriculum are already dyslexia based.
okay. Well, let's talk about that. That's interesting too.
Is that a good
So,
one?
yeah. So I mean, first of all, I want to be fair here and say it's unfortunate that sometimes parents are told these things by teachers or school staff or administrators. I like to give everyone the benefit of the doubt and believe that everybody is operating on the knowledge that they have. But oftentimes that knowledge is inaccurate. And so dyslexia doesn't have to warrant an IEP, but it's based on the severity of that specific learning disability of dyslexia. Does it have an educational impact that is so severe that it warrants specially designed instruction? Because dyslexia, like anything, can occur on a continuum of mild, moderate to severe. So there are some kids that could have mild dyslexia. Maybe they have a Section 504 plan, maybe they don't. Maybe they're just good, as they are. We tend to serve the families who have the severe and profound dyslexic kids But warranting an IEP is an eligibility decision where a team is looking at all of that evaluation data. There are very specific criteria across the country. Every state has, it's federally guided, but every state has their own nuances. Some states want to see underachievement connected to a processing disorder before they will decide if there's an adverse impact that warrants specially designed instruction. So that's not accurate. Dyslexia could warrant an IEP, but it's not a guarantee. We also hear parents say, my child's
Sure.
diagnosed with dyslexia. I need the IEP. It's a
Doesn't.
two-pronged eligibility question, right? Like, do they have a disability that has this educational impact on them? It's got to be weighed carefully. But I think the
And
part that is really interesting to me, Melissa, is what you
yeah,
said about how they're saying they don't need it because we're already teaching, I think you said, as part of our gen ed curriculum to everybody, maybe including dyslexic students. And this has
right.
been really interesting in my home state of Virginia because due to legislation, we had the Virginia Literacy Act. And a positive thing was it changed the English language arts curriculums for elementary students and even a little bit higher up. So they are using explicit phonics. That curriculum is based on the science of reading. And it is teaching phonemic awareness, decoding, high frequency, non decodable words, spelling, all the things, comprehension. The challenge becomes, is that the right placement for that student? Because if their dyslexia is more moderate to severe, even if you are offering that curriculum in the gen ed setting, it is for tier one students who don't have any disability or any educational impact. And that curriculum is often moving at a really rapid pace. Or I shouldn't say rapid, but at a pace that neurotypical students can digest it, understand it, make meaningful progress. So for kids who have severe or even moderate dyslexia, they don't even have basic letter sound understanding
Yeah.
correspondence. There's no way they can spell these grade level content words. They can be there for part of the instruction, but not for like when we're doing spelling work or decoding work, because their present levels, which we can determine through evaluations, skill assessments, screeners, they're just not ready for that. So that's
Yeah.
why I feel so strongly, and I know it's kind of a contrarian view, because everyone is very pro inclusion, and I am too. But for kids with dyslexia who have a significant gap, inclusion is really harmful from a social and emotional standpoint in English language arts. It really, really is.
And
And I'm not
it's
backing down from
interesting.
that, Melissa.
No,
Yes,
absolutely not. And it's interesting as these general education curriculums come into play that are based on structured literacy. We can
yes,
understand how teachers who may
yes,
not understand dyslexia very well say
right.
it's structured literacy. It's what you're looking
Yeah,
for. Here it is.
that's
Here's your
fair.
answer.
Right. Yep,
And that's why it's really important for parents to be informed and
yes,
understand, like what you mentioned, tier one, tier two, tier three, and the
right.
severity of the need.
Yes.
That's a
Because
very important point.
yeah, and back to that earlier question, that's why we can't really say, should that parent hold out for a certain type of services? Is it okay to move their child back into a least restrictive environment? Maybe. You have to look at the data, the performance, what was the service designed to do? All of that has to be discussed.
Yeah. And there's one more layer to this
Okay,
person's
sure.
situation. She
Yep.
mentions that they're at the end of first grade now,
Okay.
and they have been in tier three RTI all year long, and that
Okay.
he's above grade level in all subjects, including auditory language arts. So he can listen and
Wow.
comprehend,
Okay.
but he cannot identify letters and sounds, and he cannot read or identify sight words. And this just reminds me of so many, students that we've seen that are super bright, doing
Yes.
well, often
Yes.
masking the
Yes.
disability, but it sounds like this child is really just has such very disparate abilities.
Yes.
And I think it's making that person, them struggle harder to get support.
Right. And that is a key thing, especially when bright kids with dyslexia are super young. They can compensate so well that they actually look like they are reading. They can orthographically map that entire group of symbols, which they don't really know what they associate that group of symbols. They pattern match it in their head and they're like, When they say that, that's what that group of symbols means. But that doesn't mean that they understand the letter and the sound or that they can decode that word. So we
Yeah.
do see this a lot. We see, because unfortunately, what happens when kids are masking and compensating, and maybe parents are helping a lot behind the scenes because we all want our kids to do the best and we don't want to see them fail, they hit
Yeah.
a wall at some point in time. And it can be third grade, it can be fourth grade, it can be 10th grade. I mean, we
Yeah.
have a family right now that we're helping with an exceptionally bright young woman who has compensated her dyslexia for years and is struggling with basic phonemic awareness. It affects her
Yeah.
spelling and other things. So, yeah,
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
yeah.
What if a school does not have structured literacy dyslexia intervention program?
Oh, that's interesting. What if they don't have? Okay, I'm just jotting this down because it's been a long week already. It's only Thursday. Okay, so
Notes
we have four
help.
more days. Yeah. Well, that question puzzles me because when you say they don't have it, let's go back to what we were saying about the needs of the student, right? And what is specially designed instruction? Specially designed
Mhm.
instruction does involve a methodology component. So if a child requires, due to their dyslexia, a structured literacy intervention that is using an Orton Gillingham based methodology, please note that I'm not mentioning any specific programs. We're just
Mhm.
talking about SDI, right? That is delivered with a very direct and explicit method, and that it is following a defined scope and sequence and requiring mastery at every level. This is basically the type of instruction that students with dyslexia need, and structured literacy provides that. It would be inappropriate, I'm going to say, for a school district to say we can't meet that child's need because there's so much available out there in terms of curriculums, teacher training, what have you. But it does happen. We've worked in really rural communities where they don't have reading specialists, or they might have one for the whole county. Teachers really don't know what structured literacy is, or they're not using some of these packaged programs, for lack of better words. School districts can contract these services out. They can bring in certified academic language therapists. They can meet the needs of the child if they deem that it's necessary by placing them in a private school that specializes in meeting the needs of kids who have dyslexia. Placement is a consideration as part of the IEP development process. So I do appreciate the what if they don't have it? Okay, I would say then the IEP team gets to decide how is this child going to get it? Because if the data says that they require it, then in order for them to receive FAPE, a free and appropriate public education, it is now the obligation of the IEP team to figure out how can we meet that need. Can we do it through our district? Can we do it with our staff? Do we need to consider contract services? Do we need to consider private placement? But
Mhm.
not meeting the need is not an option under
Yeah.
IDEA.
Yeah. There's lots of creative solutions out there.
There
Yeah.
really are. And we've been a part of creating a lot of them and we've
Yep.
seen them work. So,
Yes.
I want to say this for anyone who might be listening, if this resonates with them. A lot of times at this point in the school year, parents are very frustrated with public schools and they're just like, I'm just going to homeschool. I'm just going to put them in private school. And I just want to say that not every it sounds like okay that's the answer, but as a mom who walked this path personally and had private schools, public schools, did the tutoring behind the scenes, did all the things, you really need to look at all of the needs of your child and understand that if they are in a homeschool setting or they're in a private school setting, there may not be that obligation of FAPE because many
Hmm.
private schools do not accept federal funding, so they're not upheld to that obligation of a free and appropriate public education. And who knows if their teachers are appropriately trained. So
Right.
just I want to say buyer beware. We do hear the frustration from a lot of families. And we do, as Melissa said, help create some hybrid, interesting models. But I am a firm believer that even if you are going to do something hybrid, that evaluations can be done for kids in private schools through the public school district. So just have
Mm,
a
important to
conversation
know.
with somebody you can trust, and we would encourage you to sign up for a discovery call with us so that you understand your options as a parent to get your child's needs met and know that no one way is the right way. All ways can work for different families and different kids.
Yep. Yeah. Okay, I know we have a few more people who have joined us since I
Yeah.
last said this. So I just want to encourage everyone who's here to ask your questions of Lorraine in the Q&A section. And that allows you to ask a question anonymously if you choose to, and it allows us to see your answers here. So, or your questions, sorry. Okay, I have another question for you, Lorraine.
Sure. I've got my notepad here.
My daughter has an IEP and receives reading services, but when I ask what they are working on, I get very general answers. Her
Mm,
progress reports always say she is making progress towards her goal,
mm,
sufficient progress, but I
mm,
never see actual data.
mm-hmm.
We have an annual meeting coming up at the beginning of the next school year, and I
Okay.
don't know what information I should be asking for before the meeting or what I should be doing this summer. I feel like I should understand more about what's happening, but I just don't know what questions to ask.
Okay. I might need to take this in chunks as well, Melissa.
Yep.
But I did hear the IEP reading services, so I am going to go out on a limb and assume this is a child with dyslexia.
Hmm.
And then I heard that concerned with general progress.
Hmm.
So, but I want to just pause here and say back to what we were talking about. I mean, these fall, winter, spring assessments that are hard on a lot of kids, that data can tell you so much. And then
Yeah.
in addition, if your child has an IEP, what kind of skill data, progress monitoring data, curriculum-based measures did the IEP team collect throughout that year to speak to the progress? And if they're not able to show you the progress from, now we're at quarter four, so they should have quarter one, quarter two, quarter three, quarter four data. If they can't show you a trajectory of progress through their own data, that's a big red flag. That
And,
what
and
part of the
there's a
child
difference
serves
between just a statement of sufficient progress
exactly.
and actual numbers, percentages. How many trials did we
Yes.
do of this particular skill
Right.
in a quarter? We
Yes.
should be looking for that kind of
And I
information.
just, yeah, and we totally hear you when you say general comments because we see this a lot on these IEP
Hmm.
progress reports. Whereas Melissa's saying it will say sufficient progress, and then you'll look at the narrative for the data, and it will say so and so, is such a hard worker. They've really
Doing a great
improved their
job.
reading fluency, and we're excited for next year or something. I mean, I'm kind of overly simplifying it, but the goal might say so and so is going to read a grade level passage at 146 craft words per minute, and they're going to do this at 95% accuracy on 4 out of 5 opportunities. And there's nothing in the narrative that speaks to all of those metrics. So,
Hmm.
if this child is getting reading services and they're saying it's general progress comments, I would be wanting to get together with my child's case manager. And parents do have the right to inspect and review their students' data. So you can go in, schools are not obligated to like photocopy this for you or provide you with copies, but every district you have to check with your district to find out what they will allow. But at a minimum, you can inspect and review your child's cumulative file, their student records. You can ask to see progress data for each of the goals and have them show you, we said they mastered this goal. Here's all the data that we use to justify that. Or, we're so sorry. We just think they're really hard worker. And so we said they were making sufficient progress, but we actually don't have that. Then it becomes a question of, can we get some data? Can we do a fluency measure on a grade level passage to find out how my child is performing? Yeah,
And she asked what other questions to ask. And one thing that comes to mind for me is, are the goals ambitious as
yeah,
well? So not just
very good
thinking
point.
about the progress data, but also thinking about the goals, because
Yes,
oftentimes we'll see that a student is making sufficient progress, as we said,
yeah.
towards that goal. But is that goal helping that child close their achievement gap as
Right.
well?
Yes. And we
Yeah.
often, one other thing I just want to give as a tip to families is if a goal is showing mastered in the middle of the school year or even the beginning of the school year, and the school team does have data to support that, as we talked about, maybe that goal goes away, or maybe it should be, as Melissa is suggesting, the bar should be raised a little bit higher because there's a
Hmm.
multi-year grade. level gap. So just because they're making progress in that direction doesn't mean they're completely done with closing that achievement gap. So we see this a lot for dyslexic kids who are learning how to decode on fluency. They may be working reading, 60 words correct per minute, and then it's 80, and then it's, 100. They might have a fluency goal for a couple of years because they're moving that trajectory a little bit higher each time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I also just want to point this parent to our blog for this month
Oh, yeah.
because this month we talk about what the spring data is really telling us, how to look at data, and the questions
Right.
that you might ask based on what you're finding. So, like Lorraine said, looking at that fall, spring, winter, and then spring data, seeing the trajectory, it kind of walks parents through how to look at that data and then what kind of questions that really brings up.
Yes,
So
that's
I,
true.
I encourage you to take a look at that blog and use that to build some questions
Yes.
for next year's IEP meeting as well.
Yes. And I also want to add on, that's a great point, Melissa. Thank you.
Yeah.
That, this is not a aggressive move by parents to ask to meet with the case manager, to review student data, to better understand progress. It should actually be more of a collaborative move to be like, hey, we would love to meet with you, learn more about the work you're doing, the progress my child has made. We really want to celebrate progress and better understand it. So a lot of times parents are like, I don't want to be that mom. I don't want to be viewed as that I'm not happy. I love my child's teaching team, what have
Mhm.
you. This is perfectly fine. You parents are equal members of the IEP team. So they do have a right to ask these questions. We all would always say in a professional way, but participate in looking at progress, in suggesting goals, in decision making. It's your child and you are on their team if they have an IEP.
Yep. Good point.
Yeah.
All right, next question.
Okay.
I have a niece with an IEP who has already been met with about goals for the next year. I'm a
Okay.
teacher and I feel like the goals are not adequate. This kind of goes back to what we were just talking about,
Yeah, exactly.
and that they're too easy. The parents
Okay.
have already signed off on the IEP. I
Okay.
asked them to set up another meeting so I can be there because they just might not understand what they signed.
Okay.
As a professional, should I just let it go or should I help them set up a meeting and help suggest stronger goals?
Okay. That's a great question. Yes. And so that person says they are a professional, right?
Yep, that
I
person
love
is a
that. Okay.
teacher and
So,
it's her niece.
oh, okay. Got it. All right.
Yep.
So too easy. And they signed off on the IEP. So first of
Hmm.
all, when parents have signed off on, let's just say, an initial IEP, as we said, it's not a one and done. So parents can ask to reconvene the IEP team at any point in the year. Um, and definitely, if this professional who has knowledge about the child, parents can invite whoever they would like to their child's IEP meeting. They will have to, sign some permission forms that they're bringing a guest to the meeting, but it's perfectly fine to bring a guest to the meeting to speak about the child, what you believe their abilities are, your concerns for how the goals are not ambitious. And the school team should be using data to determine if the goals are too easy, can draft new goals that are closer to grade level expectations. And this can be done through an IEP addendum. So you may have just signed off on the IEP, which is fine, but you absolutely should. We would recommend, if this professional who sounds like she has some background knowledge in literacy and IEPs and grade level expectations, we would encourage you to reconvene the IEP team to accompany your family member, to talk collaboratively with the school team on what is the data by which you propose these goals. What are the grade level standards in this state or this county? How large is this gap? What is this goal going to allow my niece to do? That doesn't sound ambitious enough. Can we, if that's the case, how can we make this goal robust enough to last for the entire school year and really start to meaningfully close these gaps? Um, I definitely wouldn't let it go. I hope
No.
my answer is conveying that. I would,
Yes.
and I would say, you know, we love when teachers and administrators want to learn more. We're actually going to be doing a teacher training program this summer that we're very excited about. Um,
That was my note on here, Lorraine. I was like, professionals. Ah, yes, please learn more advocacy so you can help these kids.
yes,
Absolutely. I
because we
love to
do.
hear that.
Yeah, and you know what? Honestly, the handshake's both ways. It's a family school partnership when the kids have the best outcomes. So if this teacher, is looking for more training on dyslexia and IEPs, we're going to be offering that down the line. So reach out to us. And I wouldn't let it go. And that family member
Yeah.
is lucky to have you supporting them and knowing enough to know that maybe the goals are not appropriate. Because what happens with inappropriate goals is parents are falsely assured that the child is making progress, we're closing the gap, and then they will get that end of the year assessment or that next year assessment, and they're like, oh, what happened? And then
Right.
unfortunately, sometimes school teams, out of that kind of defensive posture, will say, well, they did make progress. And that's true. They did make progress compared to where they started, but the goals and services weren't ambitious enough to really
Yeah.
allow for meaningful progress.
Yeah. And
Yes.
I just want to commend this teacher to take what
Yep.
she knows
Yes.
and to, help another dyslexic student get the IEP she needs. That's
Yes.
just terrific. And, we recently taught a class as well, and we had a certified academic language practitioner with us in our class as well. And it makes my teacher heart happy to see
Yes.
professionals who support students with dyslexia also really understand a little bit more about the law and
Yes.
IEPs and how to
Yes.
create strong ones for students because it just helps the students even more
Yes.
and makes me very excited.
Yes.
So, okay, next question. My
Okay.
son is 9 and he
9.
has severe dyslexia. For
Mm-hmm.
a long time, he was unable to put names to things long term.
Okay.
It would take him months to remember the name of a new pet, for example.
Mm-hmm.
That has gotten better with time, but he's still unable to recognize letters or read.
Mm-hmm.
He does great with any math, but letters he struggles. We are
Mm-hmm.
in Virginia, and the school just informed me that they are considering holding him back this year. He has
Mm-hmm.
already been held back once when he was younger.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, a little more. He has an IEP through the school and receives pull-out services for extra help. They make accommodations to help him, but he is unable to do most of the work independently due to his inability to read at all. I need advice or direction for how to help him. Are there any tools or programs that I can use at home? And she
Mm-hmm.
says, thank you.
Okay, sure. All right, let's get into that. All right, 9-year-old, severe dyslexia, has an IEP, some polite services. I do want to say that's very common. Students with dyslexia struggle with names of things long term. You'll often see kids not be able to remember the ABCs, not be able to remember the days of the week, the months of the year, the order of sequencing. So
Hmm.
fully understand that. She said can't recognize letters or read. I mean, I have to say, first of all, I love that she wants to help the child at home, and we'll get to that.
Hmm.
But this IEP doesn't sound like it's serving her child if she doesn't see progress. I mean, everything that we just said, hopefully she's going to watch the whole recording if she's not here live. All of that is really, really important. Like what data was in the IEP? What was it supposed to help him or her do? And why is it not working? Are the
Hmm.
services sufficient? In terms of how can you help at home, I don't know if she's qualified to teach some of this, structured literacy using an Orton Gillingham based approach. There are, I love Susan Barton's program. Do you remember Susan Barton, Melissa? She's
I
been around
do.
for quite a while, and she
Sure.
does train parents and teachers on her methods. So there are other programs like through IMSC, the Institute of Multisensory Education. We love the Dyslexia Training Institute out of San Diego. They have online training programs on Orton Gillingham. So, if the parent is trying to teach their child, for one thing, I would say just know that you will be somewhat enabling the school district. If the IEP is not strong, you're teaching behind the scenes. The school district is going to use whatever data they have to justify that they are helping your child make progress. So I would want the IEP to be addressed. And there's also, as we said, private academic language therapists, tutors, if you're not wanting to do this yourself, there are a ton of options for how to help your child. At the bare minimum, I'm going to say all parents, because I think as parents, we all want to do all the things. Um, should really work on building up, and I know this sounds simple, but I think it's so important, normalizing the dyslexia, building
Mhm.
up the child's self-esteem and confidence, letting them do what they are great at, whether that's art or sports or whatever, and really celebrating those abilities and talents. Definitely let them listen to audiobooks or read aloud as much as you can because that is building their vocabulary, their background knowledge, read the story aloud, ask comprehension questions, talk about what did they hear, the setting, the characters, the story, what were their takeaways, whatever you can do behind the scenes to kind of promote that thinking around literacy. But unfortunately, sometimes Melissa, and I did this myself. I had my son like, getting services through the county, hiring tutors that weren't qualified through the summer, and
Hmm.
I was creating a lot of confusion. So then when he did go back to elementary school, even if the teacher, and unfortunately they didn't know at the time, but even if they did, let's say we're trained in Orton Gillingham and we're trying to work with him, they would have had to unteach so many things that the well-intentioned tutor taught him all summer, that it's just critically important, if you're going to try to help your child, that you really have a plan that is going in the right direction and all of your efforts are aligned. And again,
Hmm.
this is why we say reach out to us. We do complimentary discovery calls, we share resources, we write blogs, we do trainings. We are not selfish with this information. So we want to help, as many families as possible, and we fully understand that not everyone can afford to invest in our services for the done for you advocacy. But what really is hard for us to hear is years later, they're like, well, I thought this would help. This person said they
Hmm.
were a retired teacher. I took them to this library reading program. Just
Especially for this student where they said it's severe dyslexia.
I know, I know.
Yeah.
So we want to do things as parents. There's a whole host of options. There's wide ranges of resources in terms of investment level. I would really love for that person to contact us, and so we could learn more and then
Hmm.
give better suggestions. But
Yeah.
yeah, parents can
There's something,
absolutely learn to do this themselves if they want to. I will say I tried to teach my own son, and that was not a match because there was too much power struggles. And ultimately, what
yeah.
happened was he so wanted to please us that he just constantly felt like he was disappointing us. So
Mm,
that I would say is a watch out for parents. Like protect your relationship with your child
yeah.
because their social and emotional well-being has to be prioritized. It has to be number one. They have to know that yes, they might have a learning challenge or difference, but that you love them, that they're bright and capable, that there's ways to learn this information so that they can access reading and spelling, that you're there to support them every step of the way, that the school team is
Yeah.
going to help them, that we're going to have audiobooks or what have you. The most parents can normalize this, especially for young kids, the better off they're going to be. And we see elementary school kids celebrating their dyslexia. They're doing verbal reports on, I'm dyslexic, and here's what it's like to be dyslexic. And so we really do want to, not to be on a soapbox about it, but the social and
Yeah.
emotional is everything. Because then when they get to high school, if they feel broken in some way, if they feel less than, they are somewhat of a shutdown learner and they feel
Yeah.
like school is against them. So it's really important.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. Thank you.
Yeah.
Um, okay. I have another question. It's very similar though.
Maybe we
Again,
can pull out the parts that are different, Melissa.
yeah, hold on one second.
Okay.
Um, it's asking how I can help improve her spelling. So it's not specifically
Spelling.
reading, it's spelling, and
Oh,
it says that the school gave a colored overlay to use when reading. And as far as what I can see here, that is the support that was provided.
mhm.
So again, I think that's a very similar kind of situation where we have a school that isn't providing the support that it needs to provide, not just
Right.
accommodations. And actually, this I thought of this with the other question as well. So often I see parents talk about what accommodations should I have for my students with dyslexia? What accommodations should be in the IEP, but not talking as much about the specially designed instruction and the
Right.
services.
Yes. Hmm.
And I see that twice now with these questions. So you already addressed the part about helping from home, right?
Hmm.
But can you talk a little bit about accommodations and specially designed services and what parents should be looking for to make sure that the IEP is effective?
Okay. Well, first I want to say something, if I could, Melissa, about the helping
Yeah.
from home,
Hmm.
because again, it's also important to know when enough is enough. If a child is actually getting services from a qualified teacher who is using the right approach, the right curriculum, the right methodology, it's really unfortunate when we see parents who are like, okay, well, they're getting an hour a day at school, and then we have them work an hour and a half at night.
Yeah.
We do not recommend that. And if you look at the research on using Orton Gillingham methodology, they don't recommend that either. Like there is a point of no more absorption. And that's why I'm saying if they love to listen to books or what have you, decide what your intensive services are going to be and then let those be the services. So I just kind of
Yeah.
wanted to get that out there because
Sure.
there is that panic in us sometimes as parents, and we're like, we're going to do all these things. And then you said talk about accommodations and instruction, especially design instruction. This is also
Yeah.
something that I find, not to call out the dads in the audience if there are any, but I get asked all the time by dads, well, I don't want, my child to be like cheating or to make things so
Mm.
easy for them in school. So I don't really want to accommodate. I'm sure some moms have these thoughts too, but I do hear it a lot from dads. And what we always teach and what we serve when we're working with students is when your child has a multi-year gap and they're getting services to close that gap, the only way to level the playing field for them to show what they know in their current grade level is through accommodations. And often it's if they're dyslexic, it's through assistive technology. Like otherwise they don't have a way in to the grade level curriculum. And
Yeah.
so when we're talking about kids with dyslexia, we're talking about audio text, we're talking about like electronic text that everything can be highlighted and read aloud, audio testing. We're talking about speech to text technology where they're not spelling every word on a written composition, they're saying it or they're dictating to scribe, dictating to a teacher. We might be talking about extra time. We might be talking about alternate way to assess mastery of content. We actually have some high school students who are in some Spanish classes or they're in biology and vocabulary is really tough. And they do have to know the word and the definition, but maybe they're not handwriting it. Maybe they're matching the word to the definition and showing
Mhm.
that through an alternate way to assess content. So I'm just giving some ideas of accommodations. Again, they should be individualized based on what the student needs, their grade level, but 100% you just can't have accommodations without specially designed instruction because the specially designed instruction is there to fill a gap. We're working on a gap. We're trying to provide intervention to close that gap. And in the meantime, what are we asking this child to do or young person to do if they're in high school? And how are we giving them that vehicle to do that? And that is through accommodating. And
Yeah.
I want to add on, Melissa, real quick. It is because people always say, well, will they have these accommodations forever?
I was
We
just
don't
gonna.
know the answer to that, right?
Right.
Maybe, maybe not. We will see kids become so well remediated that they're like, I don't need the audio test anymore. And in fact, I don't like that voice. So I'm going to I read it and I'm doing just fine. And they're getting the score that they want. And so they let that accommodation go. And then the school district doesn't believe they require it anymore anyway. So everybody's in agreement with removing, maybe that audio test. But then we see kids who have maybe working memory deficits, very severe and profound dyslexia, and they can I read at a nice rate and pace, but they can't comprehend as well when they're eye reading. So they may still be able to eye read, closer to grade level, but they need the accommodation of audio test or electronic text or read aloud because it affects their comprehension because they're
Mhm.
accurate but super slow decoders. So it has to be individualized. But I just believe I've never had a case where we've had a child not have any accommodations and have, an IEP with goals and services.
Right. And as a parent to be looking for not just accommodations, but
Yeah,
also that specially designed
that's
instruction
right.
to help them close that gap. All right, I've got
Unless,
one more.
oh
Oh, go
wait, sorry,
ahead.
I have to add this because unless
Yes, go
they're on a
ahead.
504 plan and they don't need services. I mean, again,
That
we're
can
not
happen.
mostly talking about IEPs tonight, but I just want to say the two regulations for students with disabilities, IDEA, which we've defined, and Section 504 is under more of civil rights law that is there to ensure there's no discrimination, no denial of access to students with disabilities, different criteria, different considerations, but sometimes you will see a 504 plan that just has accommodations. So I just wanted to give that little caveat. Sorry.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you for that. Okay, well, I know we are close to running out of time, but I have one more question I
Okay.
want to get in.
Okay.
My son has dyslexia and ADHD.
Okay.
Reading is difficult, but honestly, the executive functioning issue
Oh,
seems to create just as many problems. He
yeah.
loses assignments, forgets directions, struggles to get started, gets overwhelmed, and the school focuses only on reading because that's what he qualified for in his
Oh,
IEP. Can he get accommodations for the ADHD in and an IEP for reading?
yes. It's a simple answer, but I'm going to explain it. Okay. So I heard dyslexia and ADHD, eligible under reading, now is really concerned about the executive functioning piece and wondering like how can that be addressed through the IEP process? Like can he
Yeah.
actually get help for that? So it goes back to what we were talking about. It doesn't really matter what her son's qualification is because he was qualified under specific learning disability because of his reading challenges. But he also probably qualified. I think I don't know if she said qualified under ADHD, but let's just say he has ADHD. He wasn't
He
qualified
has
under
it. Yeah, it
unadult
didn't
impairment.
qualify under it.
But knowing that he has ADHD, if he has certain functional needs in addition to his academic needs, due to his executive functioning weaknesses, then he 100% can have services and accommodations to help with those executive functioning weaknesses. But it all starts like with needs, determine services and accommodations. So, she would have to be able to, she said, I think you said, like forgets directions, loses assignments. She's going to have
Hmm.
to be able to speak to what are the challenges, what does she believe he needs, and then
Hmm.
through teacher input and collaborative discussion determine, okay, if these are the needs, how are we going to address them? We have a lot of kids who have dyslexia and ADHD. It's quite common actually. Over 30% of the time those two
Yeah.
disabilities live in the same house, as I like to say. And so you will have kids with dyslexia who have executive function challenges. And so it's just figuring out like, is it task initiation? Is it stamina? Is it, self-regulation? There can be a lot of things, but I see that we're out of time, Melissa, so I could go on
Yes.
and on. I just thank you to
Yes.
those who joined and stayed with us the whole time, and to those who will watch the replay. I really love nothing more than connecting with the community, and thank you for all the great questions. So it's been fun.
Yeah, thank you. And if you have any more questions, don't hesitate to reach out to us. Our website is lorrainehightower.com. You can just book a quick chat with us, and we look forward to talking to you.
Well, and I just want to say, Melissa, if you liked what you heard tonight, if this was helpful, please, how do they get in our community? Because we have so many fun teaching opportunities coming up and things we're going to be doing for parents and school members and tutors and all that alike. How can
Yeah,
they get in our world?
get onto our website and sign up for our newsletter. You'll see a pop-up come up for that. And then you'll get to hear more about what is going on in our community, when our blogs are released, when we're offering new educational opportunities. So
Yes.
keep in touch.
And in the
All right, thanks
meantime, we
so
hope,
much, Lorraine. You have
all
a
right.
wonderful evening.
Yes. And everybody have a wonderful summer. All right. Thank you, Melissa.
Thank you, everyone.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Bye bye.